Welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, everybody. The podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, we're your hosts. That's Blake. I'm Will, and it still feels weird without our intro music. But I don't. Do you think we'll even get new intro music, or is this just our new norm?
I think, I don't know. I think we'll get something because,
I know, because it's different for you because you never really heard it, but I always did. So it was like part of my ritual, and it just feels bizarre without it now.
I always just had to pretend like I was listening to it. I was like, but
yeah,
I don't
now
know.
we're. It's funny. Like I don't know if you see it, but like it feels like once or twice a week we'll get like this video has been demonetized from like 2 years ago. So I don't know why they didn't like all get flagged immediately, but all our old podcasts are still just getting tagged from that song.
Do you think like the royalty expired, the royalty free like expired or something, or?
I think either that or like whoever made that song decided one day like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I'm gonna register this with the whatever they register it with for YouTube to flag it. So who knows?
And maybe also it was ripped. Maybe someone ripped it and said this is royalty
Oh
free,
yeah, and it
when
just
it
never
really,
was. Yeah.
yeah. And then someone like the original person was like, wait a second, and you're like, today's like AI bot driven everything, like so much original content is actually someone else's content.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see something like that happening where like,
Yeah.
a bunch of bots crawled a bunch of music and was like, put it all like on a royalty free website. And then someone was like, wait a second,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I could totally see that being the case, to be honest.
But
But anyway,
anywho,
today we are here to talk Worlds Beyond Number, The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. Very juicy episode. But before we dive into that, real quick, just our typical announcements. Discord linked down in the description below on YouTube if you're watching there. Come join us. We got our Wizard, Witch, Wild One little community growing, which makes me happy to see that chat having some chatter in it. And of course, also our Critical Role stuff, all our D&D stuff, just all the nerdy stuff. If you're a Discord user and you haven't joined, you need to. Because this Thursday, we will be having our watch party for Critical Role, like we do every week. And then we just finished Calamity proper with our Sunday night watch parties. But I saw that there was another one on there. So I was going to ask you, are we doing the wrap up?
I don't know.
Okay.
I also kept the event. I need to change the name because someone else asked, "Hey, could we watch this next?" So I didn't know if we were going to take a break or if we would be like, yeah, let's just, maybe Sunday night just becomes like a, we're watching this. The issue the reason it hasn't been more consistent was, from my point of view, there came a point like early in the year where it was basically me, Will, and Glimmy, just the three of us. We're like, do people want to watch this still? But someone did ask for, I think it was a Dimension 20 thing. But all that to say, stay tuned to the Discord and we'll figure out, what we'll do.
Yeah, 100%. I know a lot of ideas have been thrown out, and at least me personally, like even if like Blake and I aren't there, if you guys just want to do like I would love for the Discord to be a hub for that type of stuff. But yeah,
within reason.
Right.
I feel like if we give like a blanket,
right,
just stream whatever you want.
Yeah,
someone's gonna like grab like their very niche porn or something and be like, "It's totally cool, man." You're like, "What is
they
this?"
said it was chill.
Yeah. I put an NSFW label on it. What's the big deal? So
Anyway.
Anyway.
So yeah, all that being said, I don't know if we're doing something this next Sunday or not, but decent chance, I guess.
Yeah. We don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So join the Discord is the long and the short of it. Our live stream this Friday, as usual, as well, at 1 p.m. Central Time. And then, not that this is an announcement for everybody, because only like 5 of you, but we also have the session 0 for the one shot this Friday as well, right?
That's right. And then I keep want to say the live show as if it's a big deal.
Get your tickets.
We'll be streaming the Husk and Seed one shot a week from this Friday, and that'll be happening in the Discord. It's a one-time event, so if you miss it, it doesn't go on YouTube.
That's right.
So if you miss it, you miss it. Which with my DMing, that could be a good thing if you miss it. We'll just see. But
No, no, no. It'll be
anyway,
amazing. So yeah, those of you that
so
didn't get to see the first one and we're sad about that, make sure you come to this one.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. Unless you got anything else.
Yep. I'm good.
Alrighty. Well, in that case, let's jump into our discussion. But before we do, we like to give a little recap of the episode. And we cut that recap out and host it separately on YouTube for your convenience. So, just in case you are only watching that recap right now and you want to hear our full thoughts on the episode, you will also be able to find a link down to that in the description as well. And I did not write the episode title down. Did you, my friend, by any chance?
Um,
Oh, I
no.
remember. I think it's called The Vote.
Yes.
Yeah. So, episode 32, The Vote. And actually, for those of you watching, forgive me for looking at my phone because I actually listened to this one when I was on my walks. And so I took all my notes on my phone. So, I'm going to be
Cool.
reading off of that. All right. So, we pick up with Suvi having shown everyone this memory that she got from her box of the spider box with Hakea and this world tree. And the vision has ended, and Ursulon has basically translated everything that the world tree said, the half of the conversation that Suvi didn't pick up on when she originally watched it. And basically, they have gleaned that, this wand was constructed for the purpose of creating this coven and binding them with this covenant. And that, in fact, there were other wands that could have been chosen. There were other, like, covenants that could have been made, but they specifically chose that one. And again, the main thing we learned from that is that there must be an odd number in the conclave. The I can't. What is the what coven? The coven. There we go. The coven cannot end on an even number because the whole thing is built upon these like disparate forces batting their heads together and yet still coming to some sort of amicable conclusion. Um, so Ame now has this thing that she can point to and be like, "Hey, you can't get rid of me because then we'll be an even number." So they then ask Suvi, how did you get this memory? And Suvi explains, basically as earnestly as she is able, considering she has her memory messed with, that, she was here on some mission and, she just, got this information and she was able to share this part with them. And Ame does an insight check and I think she rolled pretty well on it. And she doesn't feel panicked. Like she's not suspicious or really threatened about Suvi in this way. And she's able to like rationalize, okay, yeah, this would make sense because we witches would be able to know if she was up to something. So she had to do it this way, kind of. So Ame's kind of at peace with this like secret mission that Suvi's on. At this point, it's late. They want to get some rest before the big meeting tomorrow. So Ame and Ursulon sleep, but Suvi stays up all night in order to watch over them. And during the night, there's two little weird occurrences. One, Costa walks by the window, nothing too suspicious. But then a bit later in the night, two ice fairies kind of like fly up to their room, but they see Suvi is still awake, and so they just immediately peace out.
Mm.
So no events during the night. The next morning comes, they get up and head towards this conclave meeting. And basically, before the meeting actually starts, there's a little moment with like several characters. First of all, Heinrul goes and embraces Ursulon as brother, because they're like besties now. Ice fairies come and drop off a little note to Ame from Tefmet, who was the Antivalist that she helped cure her cold the day before. That's basically like a little thank you note. And then when Hakea arrives, she has two new spirits accompanying her, considering the other two, were banished. And it's like a little. Brennan describes it as a like bag of dried herbs spirit, and then like a tall green-skinned woman. And Takeo walks directly up to Suvi and says, "Hello, clever one." And Indri and
Mm.
Grimoire and Marara are all like, "What is going on here? Like, why is the Witch of the World's Heart getting all of these accolades from all of us?" And so they're like weirded out by that, but the conclave is beginning, and Suvi casts enhance ability on Ame for her charisma. So the witches alone enter the chamber, and Indri basically spills out the order of business, saying that the first order of business is to determine the fate of the world's heart and Ame. The second is a report from one of my retinue, Tefmet, on the Citadel. And third, if Ame is still here, then to discuss the man in black and the impact he might be having on the world. So, first up, Ame, um, let's talk about you. And the world's heart is butting heads with the rest of our domains, and so does it belong in the coven still? And Indri's like, Hikea, you were the one that paused this vote originally. Do you have anything to say? And Hikea's like, nope. And Ame says, well, I have something to say. And so she brings up the fact that this coven was founded on the domains butting heads against each other in order to find balance. And she's like, isn't that right, Hikea? And Hikea says, yes. And then Ame reminds them of the promise of this covenant, saying that opposition is the cornerstone of it. There are many faces of truth, but these wild differences are still possible to bridge. Indri says, all that's true, sure, but what if that speaks to you specifically? Like the world's heart will still exist even if you're gone. Like we can still maintain these things you're talking about without you. And then Ame brings up the odd number rule, basically saying that, like, you can't get rid of me because we can't end on an even number. And when that's brought up, there's like a change in the air. I think Brendan describes like a magic fills the place. And all of the witches are like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know the old ways? But Hakaya like cuts in and says, if we want to talk about the old ways, how about we listen to somebody who was there? And she doubles down and says, yes, like we will end if this ends on an even number of witches. Murara then realizes that they either have to spare Ame now or get rid of two people. And Indri's acts surprised at this revelation, but Hakea's like, oh, you knew. Like, don't pretend
Mm.
like you didn't know, Indri. You're as old as dirt, just like me. And Murara's like, what? And then she looks at Grimoire and asks her, Grimoire, did you know this as well? And Grimoire also knew this. So Marara, still not up to speed really with what's going on, is like, so we were just going to let the coven fall apart? And Hakea laughs and is like, no, we were going to get rid of you too. And Marara then like loses it and like immediately surrounds Indri. And Indri starts to scream and is like, you're the one that messed this up. Everything would have been fine if this meeting had happened at night like we planned. The old one would have a bite in her stomach and Ame would be dead. And basically the whole place kind of like begins to rumble. And we quickly cut to Suvi and Ursulon and the rest of the retinues outside, and they're just kind of like, what is this a good thing? Like, what's going on here? And some of them are like freaking out, some of the other members of the retinues. We cut back inside, and Grimoire is yelling at Marara to sit back down. And Marara's like, why should I? You were planning to take me out as well. I've never had the respect of this coven. And Indri says, well, why does that matter if you have the respect of the man in black? And Marara's like, whoa, that's my domain. Like, I got to deal with him. And they're like, you don't have to deal with him the way you are. Like, just throwing massive shade. And they basically also say like there's a reason, Marara, that you came with no retinue, basically like no one wants you here type of thing. Like, and that line like really cuts to her soul. Like it really hit like something she was sensitive about, and like she feels like ruined and embarrassed in this moment. And so Ame cuts in and tries to provide an out for everyone here by suggesting that perhaps Indri had meant to appoint a new witch to the council. Like, get rid of me, but appoint somebody new so that there'll still be an odd number. And maybe she wasn't going to get rid of you, Marara. And she has to roll a persuasion check on this idea and rolls a 25. And then Brennan has her roll an insight check on Indri, which she hits a nat 20 on. And Brennan says that this is information I did not intend to reveal here. um, and Ame can basically see in Indri at this moment that, of course, that's not what she was doing. Like, she had no intention of appointing a new witch. She was going to get rid of Marara. Um, but basically, in this moment, she can realize that, like, a lot of these witches are acting on fear. Marara, too, was afraid, which is why she was trying to get rid of Ame, because they had tried to convince Rin to join them on this, but they hadn't been able to. So now that Rin is gone, Ame is the new impediment since she shares the same viewpoints as Rin. And this is all very important because unanimous decisions in this council are extremely powerful. Like the magic they can evoke if they all agree is tremendous. Um, So on this insight check, she realizes that Indri has been up to something, because what number of witches in the coven would guarantee unanimous decisions every time? And it's one. So Ame realizes that Indri has been out to consolidate this power all for herself, dating back to probably even the previous members of this coven that have been removed. So that all happens like in an instant. um, Ikea then chimes in and says, "Is this true, Indri? You wished to appoint someone else to the council." And Indri's like, "Oh, yes, I actually have several candidates in mind. I was going to introduce this after we settled all this." And Ikea's like, "Well, you didn't mention that in the business at the start of the meeting." And she's like, "I forgot." So Marara looks to Ame to gauge her reaction to this, and Ame's like, "Oh, this is great! Like, I'm so excited! Like, we started this conclave thinking about reducing the numbers, but we may end by increasing them." And Marara says, "Well, okay, well, I'm going to interject new business right now that we talk about adding new seats to the coven after we figure out the Ame stuff." And Indri's like, let's not do that." But then they all like gang up on her, like, "What's your idea? What do you mean?" So it's officially added to the docket. They will discuss adding new members. But now we got to vote on Ame. So, all in favor of destroying Ame and removing the station of the world's heart? Marara doesn't raise her hand. Achaea doesn't raise her hand. No one raises their hand. All in favor of her remaining? Indri puts her hand up first, and then the rest follow. Finally, the fox, who raises his hand, voting for Ame. The vote passes unanimously. Ame remains, but now a brief recess of the conclave before we continue with the next order of business. And that's where we'll, or we don't go to break, but I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, great job. So the meeting ends. The next order of business is going to be a presentation from a guest of Indri's, the Antivalist, Tefmet, who Ame has already met. And this is to happen, I think, in one of the grand libraries, but I don't think it was actually the library we saw with the stars. I think it's just a
Yeah.
library.
Yeah.
Um, and all of each person's retinue is allowed to come and be there. So we get a little bit of a break as people kind of get things together. Ame comes out with kind of like this vibe of like, "Yay, I'm not dead," and gives like the scoop on like, "Y'all, it was crazy. Here's what's happened." And they make their way essentially over to this library where Ame does in fact get a very brief moment with Indri, and it's very much like a conversation of what's unsaid, in that Indri now knows that she owes a debt to Ame essentially. And I think there was even like an I can't remember if it was like explicitly mentioned that a debt was owed or not, but
Pretty
it's very much
much.
it's very much understood between the two of them that like Ame's like, "Hey, I hold one over you now. I've done something very big for you." The Antivalist is also there, and the Antivalist, it's very much like when you go to like a meeting and someone's like getting their slide deck ready or getting like their notes together. The Antivalist is going through like a stack of papers and like flipping through things. Well, it gets a little bit more complicated when Suvi, the Antivalist, actually clocks Suvi and realizes that there is a wizard from the Citadel who is going to be present in this meeting. Tefmet is immediately thrown by this and immediately announces to Ame and Indri, I can't do this meeting. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And Indri's very much like, "I invited you here. Like, how can you tell me you can't do this?" Like, is pretty peeved that now now that Tefmet is trying to back out of it. And Ame tries to smooth this over by essentially Suvi offers to Ame, like, "Hey, you can just tell me what happens. I'll leave the meeting." And I think also Suvi said like she was ready to crash also from not having slept the night before. But it's like, "Hey, I'll leave. No big deal. You just tell me what happens." So Suvi leaves. Indri is essentially like, "Hey, is she leaving on her own accord, or is she being like forced to leave? Like, did my guest cause this?" Just trying to be like typical, hospitable Indri,
Yeah.
I guess. And then Tefmet sort of begrudgingly continues with the meeting, but not before deleting, or rather, taking a few of the pages and like incinerating them before the meeting starts. With the remaining pages, Tefmet begins the meeting by essentially presenting on, um, and this is understandable why they didn't want Suvi present, essentially talking about what the Citadel has been doing in recent years, and that there have been conversations and gossips around the Citadel constantly pushing the boundaries of essentially taking advantage of the spirit world, and that basically what's communicated is what we saw in the first season with Naram, that that kind of incident, that there are powerful wizards who are seeking to replicate that and continue to gain that kind of power over the great spirits. And Tefmet essentially ends their presentation with revealing like these large, like silvery discs, and the party immediately recognizes these as being the same devices that were at the Derrig where Naram was captured. And again, the implication being not that this research was then taken from Naram and now people are looking at it, but rather that this is part of a far-reaching, expansive push to take advantage of the spirit world, and Naram was just one example of it. But that is where our episode ends, episode 32 of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, The Vote. And again, join our Discord and chat about some Wizard, Witch, and the Wild Ones with us, so that it's not just me and Will. So,
Well done, man.
all right.
Great up.
Great app.
And I gotta just start by shouting out Taylor Moore. That, like, more than a few times, just the score was really setting the tone for me. It's just so good.
This app really paid off for all the lead up to it. It was just a really great episode for sure.
Agreed.
I loved Indra just losing her composure.
Yeah.
And just like, I was like, what is happening? Like, this is just nuts.
Yeah, I was worried for like how it was actually going to go. Like,
yeah,
if they weren't able to kind of rein it back in. But yeah, I feel like there's two big things to talk about: the meeting and then the Tefmet revelation. So I guess let's start with the meeting. So where to even begin there?
I just loved the genius of Brennan, because I was so curious how this vote thing was going to play out. And like we talked about this, of like, surely they know the odd number thing.
Yeah.
Like, surely they've thought of this.
Yeah.
But it was like this big question mark of like, well, how are they going to navigate it? And like the brilliance of Brennan for it to have been Morara, and Morara being the unknowing one. Like, I adored how all of that played out.
Yeah, just the fall guy, the patsy, you know? So Indri and Hakea and Grimoire were all in cahoots, is how I understood it, to some extent.
I don't know if they were like actively in cahoots, like Morara and Indri were. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Indri and Morara, Indri very much manipulated Morara to be part of this plan. And then I think, I don't know Grimoire's take, but I know with Hakea just seemed indifferent to it all. Like, okay, they're going to kill a witch. Yeah, I guess either we're going to disband or we'll kill someone else. It'll probably be Morara because no one likes her anyway. But I don't think there was like the three of them got together kind of thing.
Oh yeah, okay, I would agree with that. I don't think they were like in the back alley, but I think that, especially since they all knew that, like, I don't think they even considered disbanding the coven, I guess is what I'm saying. I think at the moment they were voting for Ame to get out, I think the three of them, especially Indri, obviously, knew that someone else would have to get out too. And that basically, Hakea and Grimoire are connected, so they're not going to vote for each other.
Yeah. The reason I said that is because Hakea's asked about it, and Hakea says something like, I thought you wanted to disband the coven, is like the line she gave. I'm like, why would you let this happen, or something like that? And she's like, I thought you wanted this to happen, or
okay. I guess I must have missed that one, but that would make sense.
And also, I mean, she was very kind of indifferent to everything. I love how Brennan described like seeing the young Ame on Ame's quest kind of
Hmm.
like reignited this
Yeah.
younger version of her. Was kind of
Yeah.
a nice little detail.
I forgot, classic Brennan. He phrased it eloquently and beautifully, but I know what you're talking about. I forgot what the exact verbiage was, but like when he described her re-entering the conclave this time with like
Yeah.
all the new flowers and like the
Yeah.
reinvigoration and how like Ame
Instead of
had,
like instead of like moths, it was like butterflies, right?
yeah, he had like get reminded her of her purpose or something, or like the reason
Yeah.
she created this thing in the first. It was something like that.
And I loved also like everyone loving Ame and just the other three witches
Yeah.
being like, "What is happening right now?"
What's
Like,
going on here? I thought it
yeah.
was this isn't really something to talk about, but I did think it was interesting that that implies that Heinrul didn't tell Grimoire what happened because she was surprised too by like
Yeah.
Heinrul embracing Ursulon, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Um but not that there's anything to read into there. I just thought it was interesting. But so yeah, and we kind of had talked about this. I'm not saying we called it. I'm not saying that. Everybody calm down. But I feel like we talked about this about Indri consolidating power and like was she behind, cuz wasn't I can't even remember what it was now, but like her apprentice or something, like we had some idea about like that weird apprentice situation with the other witch was like
Yeah.
foul play. Um and so,
Br-
that is Indri's whole goal here is to,
Yeah. Brennan pretty much confirmed it. He said
yeah.
with a nat 20, basically there's no greater end goal than being a coven of one.
Yeah.
And I think he even said deliberately, like you even to Ame, you even wonder if she had a role in those other two stations being eliminated, which you don't just drop that without it having some semblance of
Yeah.
truth
Yeah.
on a nat 20.
Yeah.
So, which I'm a little nervous, man, because Ame, I love how wholesome Erika's playing Ame. It's very Game of Thrones vibes though, of like the good guys finish last kind of
Yeah.
thing, like or get murdered. Like
Yeah.
I'm very worried if this olive branch is going to actually cause Indri to bide her time and find a new path to get revenge on Ame who has outwitted her. Or if, yeah, maybe she'll turn over a new leaf and be like, all right, maybe this whole power hungry thing isn't good. I don't know. I'm nervous for Ame.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was gonna say too. Is it's not like I don't think Indri just completely had a 180 in that moment. I think she
Right.
was happy to have an out insofar as not everybody coming to a death match all at once and the coven getting destroyed. But like, yeah, I think she owes Ame one, and like even in like a powerful magic like more than just, oh, I owe you one. Like I think she like maybe even like magically is compelled to like owe her one type of thing. Really not trying to get into the weeds on that, but yeah, I feel like she hasn't just completely changed as a person. So like I'm wondering, is Ame gonna tell Hakea like, hey, by the way, this is what I figured out? And maybe Hakea kind of knows, but like I didn't know if she was just gonna like let bygones be bygones and hope everything's chill now, or if that's gonna be like something Ame actually like digs any deeper into. Because yeah, it feels like a pretty big thing, you know. And like, what is
Yeah,
she
I
gonna?
think
What was she gonna do when she was the only one on the coven? Like what does she want from the world?
right.
Um, but yeah,
Well, and the fact that she's as old as Hakea,
yeah,
which well, I don't know if that's a literal detail, but clearly old. Um, yeah, I wonder what her ambitions are because the two of them being as old as they are, you have Hakea, who has sort of like accepted like the end of her life, if that's a fair way to put it. Like I've
mm,
kind of lived my life, um, whereas Indri seems like racked with ambition and like so much she wants to accomplish, and she seems fairly nefarious too in that.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm very curious what her end goal is.
yeah. And
Um,
I wonder if it is in her own mind, like for the greater good. Like if
yeah,
I'm the
right,
only one, it'll always be unanimous, and that way I can make sure things go the way they need to.
right,
Still not saying it's right, but like kind of in a
Yeah, I get it.
almost like in a Ludinus Deleth type of way. Like this is
Totally.
just what has to be done type of thing. Which,
Yeah.
if that is more the avenue, then again, I'm not saying she had a complete 180, but maybe she will be more open to like, okay, Ame really saved me from going down a dark path. Maybe let's try this thing and see. I don't know.
I think the whole reason that she hasn't taken a true apprentice is because she never intends to die,
Mm.
and she never
Yeah,
intends to, like, lose her station.
yeah.
Because I can't think of her name, but her,
Neef.
uh, niece, it seems like is an apprentice just in name alone. Um, I mean, I'm very curious where her character goes because now we're going a different direction where they're even now bringing on witches. Which
Yeah,
again, Ame,
potentially.
so yeah, Ame like, woo, new friends,
Yeah,
and like this is, I mean, Indri has presumably over like the last couple hundreds of years has worked to get the coven down to this number.
yeah,
So to undo that, I mean, yeah, uh, she can't be happy about it, but I'm very much curious, like, what's her next play?
yeah. Which I'm assuming we'll get to see that. I hope we do. But
Yeah,
given this Citadel stuff, I don't know if things could kind of take a turn from here. But I hope we do get to see that the next two orders of business that were on the docket, which is talking about the Man in Black, which I want
yeah,
to touch on that more with Marara, but and then adding new members because
yeah,
yeah, I think that would be a real like because like you said, if she spent hundreds, if not thousands of years trying to dwindle down, like we might see more of if she actually is open to change, if she will like vote for new members at this point, or if she's still like adamantly against it.
yeah.
Um, but
I mean,
yeah,
it could be if she wants, if they go the route of adding more, if maybe she'll try to keep like the decision on who that person is, so
yeah,
that, like, for example, Neef, like, yeah, Neef's actually the person I was thinking of who's like sworn to Indri. Maybe her next best play is like, I'm gonna intentionally pick witches that I can manipulate and
yeah.
manage.
Well,
Um,
and again, not that Brennan is tied to any of these things, but like based on what she said in the council, like Indri said she had several candidates. So like I presume she will be the one
yeah,
proposing people potentially.
yeah.
Um yeah,
Um,
very interesting.
And then Brennan did a great job of making me feel bad for Marara, this person who wanted to kill Ame so bad.
Yeah.
And, just like the lines that were thrown at Marara about, like, yeah, you don't have a retinue, and we all know why.
Yeah.
And the comments about like managing the man in black, but not effectively like sleeping with him or like being his consort or whatever the phrasing was,
Mhm.
or companion. I don't know the wording that was used, but which very interesting detail about their relationship, especially knowing that the man in black tried to kill grandmother Ren.
Yeah.
So
Which I want to so yeah, this is all kind of connected for me. So one, I did like the explanation for like and I think this extends to Indri as well. But you'll have to let me know if you felt that way too. But like the reason Marara hated Ame is not because she just hates Ame and wants power. It's because of this greater tapestry going on, which between the world of magic and humans is how I'm taking it. And
yeah,
this dates back to conversations you and I have talked about, like why Marara showed up to Rin's house that night and um, tried to convince her, like, hey, like you need to come to our side on this thing. I do think that was about like doing something to the humans in the Citadel, but Grandmother Rin, as the witch of humans, essentially, of course, couldn't just come to that side. So that's where this was coming from for them. And I think Indri as well is what Brennan was trying to say, that like it comes from this fear of like he left it unnamed, but I'm naming it in of humanity and what they're up to. So
yeah.
like, um,
Maybe the wizards is a better way
yeah,
to put it.
yeah, that's better. Which if we then extrapolate that to the Man in Black, like that's seemingly what he's up to. So like from best we can glean from his actions, which maybe that makes sense why he tried to kill Rin. Maybe that was option one, at least as far as Marara and he were concerned. Like,
Hmm.
hey, we couldn't like Marara was like, hey, we couldn't convince her, so plan B, go kill her type of thing. Or I'm wondering if there's just some other issue with the Man in Black, or if he's on the same page with the witches in that regard.
Yeah, and I wonder if that conversation with Marara happened after he tried to kill Rin
Oh,
or before.
I can't remember.
I don't think
I
we
think it was
know.
before,
Okay.
because I don't think Ursulon and Suvi were there yet.
Okay. Because it was in the children's story
I
that
think
she
so.
was
Because remember,
wounded?
like, I think
Okay.
Ame was like a little girl, right? When
I
she met
didn't.
Marara.
Yes, that's right. Ursulon and Suvi weren't there yet. That's
Yeah.
right.
So I think that would logically make sense. Like Marara comes, one last conversation to try to convince Rin, can't. And so then later the Man in Black tries to kill her.
Tries to kill her. Yeah.
Not that those are connected, but considering Marara and the Man in Black are very connected, then it seems like they probably are connected. Which
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on the fact, and maybe it was just like a turn of phrase that I missed. Like when they were chastising Marara about the Man in Black, I didn't pick up the like sexual relationship connotation.
Oh.
It
I
wasn't
that's
until after that, like
oh.
Aabria as Suvi said that, and I was like, oh, I missed that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember the exact phrasing. I think I used the word consort because I've been playing WoW Cataclysm and there's a dragon that's the consort of Deathwing, but I don't think that word was used, but it was something that was like, you know, you're supposed to watch over him, not like be with him. And it was
Okay,
like,
yeah.
oh, you know.
Yeah, okay. I
Um,
missed that implication. So yeah, that's very interesting.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and we're presumably, I mean, if they're gonna present on him at the meeting, I mean, I'm curious like who's doing the presenting. I guess Marara would since it's her station, but it seems like they don't even trust her and like her relationship with him. Um Amazing that we still have a lot to talk about. Like we being the witches, because
Yeah.
there's that, there's the choosing new witches. But then I don't know if you're ready to go there yet, but like this whole thing with Tefmet and the Derrig, which are you ready to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think let me just look at my notes real quick to see if there's anything else on this first stuff. Um, no, I think that's it. But again, yes, we don't know for sure how those things are connected, but I do think all of the pieces fit really well for like how the Man in Black slots into what these witches are also wanting. I feel like it also makes sense for why he told Ursulon that you'll have to kill Ame and Suvi. One for like regret reasons or whatever. Like one was like more regretful than the other. I think that also is in line now because like he probably did like grandmother Rin, but seeing as she stood in the way of them like having that unanimous decision and stuff is like had to be done type of thing. So similarly, Ame I feel like would fit under that, and that was like the one he wouldn't want to do. And then Suvi, being representative of wizards and the Citadel, would be the other one that had to die because that is the problem. So I feel like that all like makes sense, but
Yeah.
still not completely confirmed. But yeah, so now we can move on.
So the presentation by Tefmet, which there's not much to say other than we got the reduced version of it since Tefmet burned some of the pages even after Suvi left. So I really wonder like what
Yeah.
we got was already pretty revealing. I wonder what was not spoken. But I'm very curious about this revelation, and I think we even talked about this a little bit. Like, not saying we called it, but back when season one happened, I think, or story one, arc one, whatever. Um, I think we even like asked like, what are the odds that this really was like an isolated thing?
Hmm.
But it seems like we got confirmation that the whole thing with Naram and the Derek was not some rogue wizard, this rogue mage, like doing his own thing, but actually is part of like this grander initiative,
Yeah.
which I have so many questions for. But I'm also curious about Steel, who's like, the sword of the Citadel. I'm like, how
Hmm.
could Steel not know?
Right.
And also, I don't know. What's your
Yeah.
reaction to all that?
Yeah. So I want a couple things I want to talk about there. I want to talk about Steel, but before that, yeah, I really liked that this kind of retroactively explains some of the Naram stuff because Moro, right?
Yeah.
That was his name.
Guild Mage
Yeah,
Moro.
because he
Yeah.
was like an idiot, you know? Like he was just like so excited to like have his moment, but like he was like an underling, like, you know, a guild
Mhm.
mage, not a mage of the Citadel.
Right.
And yet had been able to subjugate Naram. That doesn't really add up. And so now I love this because it implies to me that there was like he was kind of fed this like hey
Right.
like and you know it was a grander conspiracy that this wasn't his invention and his idea um which I think is it I just love that in retrospect because it
Yeah.
makes sense.
I like kind of the naivety of Moro that we see, and that we never ask the question, how does Moro have access to this kind of technology
Yeah,
that can literally imprison a great spirit?
yeah,
And like you said, realizing now, like, oh no, he was actually provided these things, and then allowed to kind of run amok.
yeah, and then was just trying to take full credit for it, you know, which I'm sure I guess
Yeah.
he was probably told like hey, don't say where you got this from. Like, keep this on the down low. I'm very interested in the mechanics of that because I don't think he's smart enough to have played it off so covertly on purpose, if that makes
I
sense.
I almost wonder if he didn't bring it up because he just assumed Suvi would know. Like, because there was never like a like, hey, so what do you know about it was just like, check it out and like pretty cool,
Yeah,
right? And maybe Moro just always just assumed like, because think about also how eagerly Moro wanted to take Suvi out to the Derrig.
right. He wanted to like show her and get credit.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there might have been like this subtext of Moro subconsciously thinking like, you know, like, oh, maybe Suvi will want to see or like want to inspect or like want to know. And um
Oh, so you think like he knew
I
that?
don't think no, I think it's one of those. I think the cleverness of it is like it's like when a boss comes to inspect your work, but you don't know exactly why they're there, and you
Mm-hmm.
know that if you ask, it's a little
Mm.
unusual to like directly like, "Hey, so what are you doing here?" You just
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
there's like this superior in you interaction where you're kind of like, "Yeah, and here's everything I'm working on."
Mm-hmm.
Even though you know they may not be as interested in every specific detail. So I just wonder if like the reason it didn't come up was because it was kind of like there was this like natural assumption from Moro, the idiot, rather than like a very intentional. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm saying, honestly.
I think
But
I get what you're saying. I'm wondering this too. Like, is he just an idiot and like whoever orchestrated this is pulling his strings and he doesn't even know that? You know what I mean?
right,
Or does he have an awareness of the covert nature of all of this? And I would lean that he's just completely being puppeted and doesn't even
right.
realize, would be
Yeah,
my guess. But
I think it's more of that he was like provided this technology and he ran wild with it. Um and then he was a convenient patsy, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, when
yeah.
like the town almost blew up
Yeah.
or was overrun. So
So, okay. So, of the evidence she was
and
talking, so first of all,
well,
or go
hang
ahead.
on. And then the other thing that's interesting about this too is it's a very clever implication of why Suvi and her friends weren't more harshly punished for the outcome. Because Steele was like, hundreds of soldiers are dead. Hey, maybe next time, just wait and let me know. And it was kind of like a weird, in hindsight, it was kind of a weird thing of like, the most you're getting is a firm talking to, despite all the damage and loss of life. And I think at the time, my interpretation was like her parents had so much esteem around them that was kind of like as far as the discipline could go. But if it was more of, hey, we really just need to let this lie and move on from it because it's part of a greater whole of like all these other things that are happening. Now, the desire to kind of brush under the rug and not reveal the grander narrative that is the reason that she got just a firm, talking to rather than anything more. And so it was about hiding that rather than it was like actually giving grace
Yeah.
to Suvi.
Yeah.
Is kind of my interpretation of that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like Steele kind of just used that as a convenient excuse.
Right.
Like, because they don't want this, especially if this is this big covert conspiracy. Like, they don't
Yeah.
want people to find out like these type of experiments that they're doing. So it's like, yeah, hand slap. Like, let's move on from this now. Like,
Yeah. Which
isolated incident.
that also that theory rests on Steele knowing, which
She has to know,
I
right?
feel like he has to.
She's like one of the top dogs in the entire place.
Right. I feel
So
like she would have to know.
yeah,
But
I
you know,
agree. Which
I don't
was,
know.
I don't know if we should spare people, but this is a conversation we've had many times. So I'll give the nutshell version. Not that we think Steele is a mustache twirling villain, but she's the sword of the Citadel. She's gonna do probably what she thinks is best for the Citadel, for humanity, for wizards. And so, could she be not being fully truthful with Suvi at times, or and maybe it like could be far worse than that. Maybe she is like a mustache twirling villain, but I'm not going that far, and I don't think you are either, at this point at least.
Well, and
But
also she's so like, we love the spirits. Let's take care of the spirits. Like, oh, I can't believe this would happen to one of our honored friends. And like,
yeah,
I kind of wonder if she's speaking out of both sides of her mouth. Like, I'm like, are you just affirming Suvi, who's best friends with Ame and Ursulon,
mm-hmm,
or do you really not know?
yeah,
Because it seems like what they're doing is in direct contradiction of that belief of them being honored friends.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Which
yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, which also, just to take this, she's the bad guy theory even farther. When you think about the double cross of Igorin, or is that his name? I can't remember. Igorin,
Um,
the
Yorin,
Yorin, yeah, Yorin. The way it's spelled, by the way, is so goofy.
yeah,
Yoren's double crossing her parents.
mhm,
We talked about maybe it was Steele who actually did the double cross, but
yeah,
like what would be the reason for that?
hmm,
And we talked like as a grander narrative, maybe it was like commitment to the Citadel versus commitment to something else, and still being like, hey, I'm sold out to the Citadel. This just is what it is.
yeah,
Maybe a further delineation of that would be like perspective on spirits,
hmm,
in that we know Suvi's parents, her mom or her dad, who released the spirits
soft. I
from
think
the
her dad.
Kasov collection, who
Hmm,
freed the spirits.
yeah,
And then Steele, if Steele's like full on use them and abuse them, like I could see that also being like a real
yeah.
hard line between them.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not ready to like fully say it's 100% shipped, but those pieces line up. Like if Steel is the one that double crossed them, again, not like out of pure evil, but like just because what she thought was right, like Team
Right.
Citadel. There's all this subterfuge of like the hidden organizations within the Citadel, like investigating each other. Like, maybe Soft and Steel figured out, hey, like, are we the baddies? Like maybe the Citadel's not that great. And so then Steel was like, how dare you double
Yeah.
cross them? It then would add up here with her, like she could have like again, like really that could have been the toughest decision of her life, like in her mind, if she thought she was doing the righteous thing and she thought Suvi's parents were traitors, having to double cross them, but still being like, I'm gonna take care of their daughter, like,
Right.
so I feel like it could all add up. And
Yeah.
then I think if Steele does know, which I think she does, in terms of the leaving the conspiracy stuff behind, in terms of the what Tefmet just talked about. If Steele does know, then at best she lied through her teeth to Suvi,
Yeah.
right? So like, and maybe we can rationalize that as saying like it's above Suvi's clearance level, it's for her own good. But I feel like that's a very charitable way to look at that. Um,
Yeah. It could
so
be. It could be Steele realized this uncovered like a huge thing that Steele was surprised about, and now wants to try to deal with it subtly, knowing that there's powerful, maybe the arch wizards who are her part of it, and she's like, I got to be subtle, and I don't want to get Suvi involved, so I'm just going to be like, yeah, it was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Or it's everything we already said, and we're not saying that's the case, but it's definitely the case. That is,
It would be
anyway,
compelling.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I'm there with you. And really, okay, so now to talk about what actually Tefmat was talking about, which I think is largely this conflict we've talked about in the story, this kind of battle between the spirit and the real, really. And the witches are about maintaining that, and the humans are about abusing it, essentially. So that's what the presentation was. Like, magic is this interplay between the spirit world and ours, and it's about balance, and the wizards are disrupting that balance because they invented the lingua arcana, and now they can
hmm
just use that stuff through understanding alone without the equivalent exchange that it was
hmm
like founded upon. And they didn't go this far, but I think if we extrapolate that to its end, it's the system's going to blow up because that's not sustainable. Like, it's not good for the world, basically. Um, but so what do you think they're doing? The wizards have, what I got from it, have somehow come up with a way to create spirits. There was some mention of that, like they birthed a spirit that didn't come from the spirit realm. That was like the
yes,
first chunk of metal, like under the sheet was like the first
yes,
thing. And then they've also, like with Naram, we see they've found a way to like subjugate great spirits. But I
yes,
didn't know what the implication was with that glyph under the second
yeah.
sheet. It was like a
I don't
ruined
know. Yeah,
glyph, and then she talked about the great one. So I didn't know if like the implication was they subjugated a great one to destroy the gate of sun and stars or something, or I wasn't sure what the connective tissue was there.
yeah, and I'm not. I think that might be more stuff will get clarified in this next episode. But yeah, that first one about I actually forgot that detail. Yeah, like the birthing of the spirit that's not from the spirit realm,
Yeah.
which I almost thought about like those wells that they have that you can put magic into, like put spell slots into, that
Mm.
becomes like this kind of like network of energy that you can pull from if you need it.
Oh yeah, the Aerith or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. And it kind of made me wonder like, is it based around that or are those two things like connected in some way? Um, all this to say, it seems like Citadels have real big we're the baddies energy right
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm curious, like, what are they wanting to use these great spirits for? Like, is it purely just to, is it like hubris? Like, these terrifying entities exist out there. Let's figure out a way to,
Subjugate them.
yeah,
Yeah.
make them ours. Or is there like some, this is where I'm trying to connect it to that gate stone. Like, is there some purpose that like the spirits they would be able to use as like weapons of war against Gauthmai, and that's
Yeah.
their intention or something? Which, I
That
mean, we
was
saw what Naram was capable of. If they
yeah.
could weaponize those things, it would be huge.
That was the intention of Moro, at least is what he said. Was that you could win the war
True,
tomorrow.
true.
Um, but it also makes me wonder, like, what's the purpose of the Kasov collection? Like, which my interpretation at the time was like you said, hubris, like ego. Like, look at what we have that belongs to
That's
us.
a good point.
But I even now wonder, is that part of like, is it part of a greater whole that is, is it knowing that Brennan is the comments that Brennan has made on like capitalism, for example, and like he pulls on like these themes quite a bit of like greed and like unending desire for wealth and like the dangerous side of just like always trying to have more. It almost makes me wonder if in a way the Citadel, like there isn't like a clear A to B, like, oh, we're gonna enslave Naram and then win the war. But if it
Hmm.
is like this like like you mentioned, this unchecked ego, but even more of just
Yeah,
like we want to just the arch wizards just want as much as possible, just unending power, magical prowess, what have you. So I could see that being a reason. It's almost like the absence of a reason is the reason. Like we're not trying to do anything other than just to have as much as possible. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think you just built even more connective tissue for me on the steel as the baddie front, because the cast off collection to me now, knowing what we know, seems like an experimental grounds. Like they're
Right.
catching
Yeah.
these weaker spirits. We were told that they like disappear from the pictures sometimes.
Hmm.
To me that implied, and maybe not that directly, but I think the implication of that entire collection was like these spirits are tested and experimented on, and
Yeah.
probably leading to the research that then led to these discs that are able to capture Naram and great spirits, right?
Right.
So maybe Soft found out about these horrific things that were happening to these spirits in the Kassoff collection, and that's why he freed them. Now it could just be like, hey, you're imprisoning living sentient creatures, and that's enough reason to
Yeah.
free them. But if he knew a step beyond that, like what the Citadel was up to,
Yeah.
that could explain it even further, and that lends credence to the idea of like Soft and Stone turning against the Citadel after they find out what's really going on, which then could
Right.
lend credence to Steel having to choose against them, yada yada yada.
We
um
figured it out, guys. We solved it.
Book it.
Brennan, we figured it out, man.
Yep.
So
If
now
you
you
want to
have to
come
come
on
on
and
the
talk
show.
about it and
Yep.
talk about how you're going to change the story now that
Yep.
we figured it
Yep.
out, we'd be happy to have you.
People are gonna leave us. People are gonna leave us angry YouTube comments for forcing us to make Brennan change his stories. So
Sorry.
Anyway.
Sorry. But um yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. I think ultimately, whatever other rationalization there may or may not be, I think it is hubris and like that unquenchable, you know,
Yeah.
thirst for more. Um,
Yeah.
that totally seems in line. But yeah, I'm.
Do we?
Oh, or go ahead.
I was kind of changing the subject.
Well, just one thing I wanted to touch on is I thought it was, well, two things really. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I did like that, like the hole in the Citadel's plan, because they're, again, hubris, powerful wizards have all the scrying protection spells, but it's like the lowly messengers that they probably like that the wizards probably didn't even like, oh, you're nothing. Like those are the ones that have like leaked this plan out. And again, maybe this wasn't intentional, but I kind of liked it as like, if it is hubris, like their blind sides are like not caring enough about the little guy, and
Right.
that's how they're getting discovered now. um but like, where do you like the fact that their rations were enchanted to last centuries? I was trying to like, is that like a time dilation thing, because like they might be going to and fro the spirit realm and like 1,000
Yeah.
years could pass? Like, I didn't know if that's what
Yeah.
I was supposed to take from that,
And
or
the only reason I went there was because in my campaign, one of my campaigns, there's something kind of like that. And it's well, and it's the spirit world's definitely based around the Fey Wild, or
yeah.
the Fey Realm, I think is what it's called in just 5e. Timey-wimey, timey loopy stuff.
Yeah.
So totally definitely seemed that way. Like they were going into the spirit world and like studying, experimenting. Which is interesting, by the way, because you have someone like Ursulon who's way shadowed and can't go back. But now there's like this interesting implication of like, would there be a way he could go back through the power of the wizards? Oh, you're muted, I think. I can't hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was wondering what the implication there, like if that tracks, which I think it does, the rations and stuff, meaning the spirit travel, that were they humans, and can humans go to the spirit realm, or were
Mm,
these actors spirits?
mm. Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
good point, actually.
which I don't really know, but oh well, maybe that's why they created spirits.
Mm.
Maybe they were creating agents that could then go to the spirit realm for them.
Yes, that's a great way to think of it.
That would make sense at least.
It's very hard for me to like think all this through because I was listening to this part while playing Elden Ring, and I was in the Siofra's well, like the
Ooh,
starlight
yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah.
I was already like in the spirit realm in my mind,
Yeah.
and so I was just envisioning them on horses, like traveling around. So
Well, it
I don't
could
really,
be. It could
yeah.
be.
I
But
mean,
that at least would give a reason for them to have been trying to create spirits.
yeah, I do
Um,
like the idea of like wanting to create a spirit for the sole purpose of sending it. Like if the barrier is like you can't enter without being a spirit, I really like that theory too.
yeah, which that would make more sense for why Ursulon can't go back, because it wouldn't really make sense to me that a spirit could be way shadowed, but then like a normal human could just go.
Yeah. Unless it just sucks to be way shadowed. Like,
Yeah.
well, I can go in. So
All right, you're banned. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's all coming together. It's very interesting.
it's kind of interesting, like the cruelty of the concept of being way shadowed. Because like having not listened to the children's story, I mean, Ursula was kind of naive to the fact that
Yeah, he didn't
that
know.
exactly. So does it really work that way where like someone could just oops, and so I don't have much else to say about it other than seeing that where Ursulon so wholesome can't go back, and then here are the wizards like manipulating it in some way either to go themselves or send spirits there. There's a very interesting disconnect's not the right word. It's a very interesting I don't know.
I
Setting
know.
those two situations against each other is very
Yeah,
interesting.
I know what you're saying. And actually, now that you say that, I'm feeling even more confident that humans cannot go.
I think that makes more
And I
sense.
bet that's why they created spirits, because the reason Ursulon was way shadowed is because he was like doing human things. Like that's what caused
Right.
it. Like he got
Right.
bathed in a shower and he slept
Yeah.
inside. So like
Yeah.
that kind of tracks to me. If the spirit realm is created to keep humans out, then any spirit that kind of muddies that line
Yeah.
may then be recognized as a human. And so like that's why he's way shadowed now.
And then you just make a new one if you're a wizard. I think it also
Oh,
for me, like the point I was trying to get at now that I've taken a few seconds to think about it is it almost like highlights the perverse is the wrong word, but like how wrong what the wizards are doing. Like
yeah.
if like the lack of justice that Ursulon can't go back, and here are the wizards like manipulating this very sacred thing for their own ends. Um, which I was wondering if like we were heading to a story point where like both sides are bad in their own ways,
Yeah.
but it's pretty heavily favored against the Wizards currently,
Yeah.
um, for everything that they've been doing. But
Yeah. I do think there will be some gray,
yeah, for
but
sure.
it
I mean,
definitely feels like the Wizards
Man
are
in Black.
the way
Yeah,
worse, way more abusing the
yeah.
situation. Um, yeah,
The only thing I was gonna say was, do we know how many? We keep saying like, I think there's one more. How many more episodes are there? Do we
I don't
know?
know. But I feel like I feel like it has to end at this like when this conclave
Yeah,
ends. I think it'll be a new arc.
yeah, yeah,
But so I mean, I could see it now that we've had the vote and stuff. I can't see it. I feel like it could be a one or two more. It feels like.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and actually, I don't know if you'll have to let me know if I've said this to you already, because that's going to be the only way I know about when I saw this. But I saw Taylor Moore tweeted, and it was either for this episode that we just talked about, or it's for tomorrow's. And I think it's for tomorrow's. But he said like I cannot. He was like most excited for this next episode,
Mm.
which this
Well,
one we just had was pretty great. So it might have been this one, but if it had been this one, that would have mean it had to have been like 2 weeks ago that I saw it, and I don't think I
yeah,
saw. I think it was more recent than that I saw it. Are you
yeah.
looking it up right now?
I was trying to. Let's see. Taylor Moore
I can't
Twitter.
remember what his Twitter was. I follow him now, so maybe it'll just come up. Let's
There we go.
see. Okay, it was August 8th. So yeah, it must be this next one. He
Yeah,
says,
wow.
"This next ep is my favorite by far. Never been more in love with the talents of the cast than when we recorded this. For many listeners, this is going to be the episode they've been waiting for. But we're just getting started. Hold on to your butts."
What? That's crazy to me. This whole arc's been very good.
Which,
So,
not that we need to spend too much time just wildly speculating on what that could mean, but like the biggest thing to me there is this conflict between wizards and witches, and maybe how this information is going to, how Ame is going to handle this,
mhm.
speaking with Suvi, and how Suvi's going to handle this. Could lead to some butting of heads. Or maybe
Yeah.
Suvi pieces together what we've been talking about, being like, there's no
Mm,
way Steele didn't know about this, and
yeah,
maybe it could lead to conflict there. I don't know.
yeah. Pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
I love it, man. I love this story. I love that we get to listen to this, and it's just very good.
Yeah,
It's good stuff.
it is indeed.
So, anyway.
One other tiny thing, this is just like a little moment I wanted to mention. Was with the spider at the very beginning of the episode where like Suvi has a little moment with it, and like they like
Hmm.
show that sign
Yeah,
of respect, and Brennan's
yeah.
like, and we know how complicated this item was. Like all the top brass at the Citadel basically like put together this thing for this moment, and like even they didn't know that this spider was capable of that. I thought that was just kind of a cool moment to speak to, like, again, the hubris. Like they think they've created all this stuff and they still don't even really understand it. And then two,
Hmm.
kind of speaking to like, I don't want to say like that the spider's alive, but like speaking to like
Yeah.
the humanity in
Yes.
magic and spirits, that like, yeah, you think you're just controlling this as like a
Yes.
thing, but no, it's like a living thing.
Yes.
Um and I don't
Yes.
know, that's one of those things where like I don't know if that was all intended subtext, but like I'm placing that there. So I liked that.
I think it's the brilliance of Brennan. Like Brennan just saw such a great opportunity to just add this cool flavor of detail to this, what is essentially like it's a machination of the Citadel,
Yeah.
and just to show like there's more complexity there. So I like that too a lot. That was great.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Well, that's all I got. I love Tuesdays because I always have to drive to a bunch of meetings, so it's always a great opportunity to listen.
Yeah.
But another reminder: join the Discord. We need more people. Talk. It's like 5 of us that we just talk
Yeah.
about the newest app, and so we'd love to have more people in there as well. So,
Absolutely. But yeah,
all
that's
right.
all I got as well.
All right. Well, thank you all. Join us for our watch party for Critical Role. If you watch Critical Role on Thursday night, episode 104, I
I think
think.
so, yeah.
And then our stream on Friday, our wrap up stream. And then a week from Friday is the one shot of
Woo,
Husk and
baby.
Seed. You have to check that out too.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, alrighty, y'all. Thanks for
all
hanging
right.
out with us. We'll
See
see you
ya.
soon.